Hello there, my name is Crystal, and today I'm going to talk to you about ethics. Now, ethics, this particular workshop is something that I wrote many years ago, and when I wrote it, I was writing it for a Wiccan organization that I was a member of when I was living out west in Alberta. So there's going to be some reference to Wicca in here quite a bit. But the thing to remember as I'm going through this is that there's an awful lot of principles in here that apply to more than just the Wiccan faith. I'm going to use the term pagan also as like an all-encompassing kind of term, but a lot of principles that are represented in here actually will translate across cultures and across systems of belief. So whatever you hear in here, don't just attribute it exclusively to Wiccan or pagan faiths. Because as I said, I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff that goes on in the world that is cross-cultural, that can be translated from one faith to another. What I'm trying to do here with this is I'm trying to make it relatable to everyone and bring it down to the absolute basics. Now, some of this stuff I'm going to read directly from the workshop that I wrote, and of course some of it's going to be ad-libbed, because of course this was written many years ago, and a lot of things change very rapidly in our lives, and especially right now. So I'm going to get started here, and the first thing that I'm going to start off with is an actual dictionary definition of ethics. Okay? So the Oxford Dictionary defines ethics as moral philosophy or moral principles. Moral is defined as concerned with the goodness and badness of human character, or with the principles of what is right and wrong in conduct. Now, if you remember, not that long ago, I think maybe about a month ago, I posted a video about right and wrong, and the fact that right and wrong is a human construct and not something that is given to us by the divine. Okay? Because the universe communicates in energy vibration. And that's something that actually we'll get into a little bit in here as well. Now, as with any faith, pagans and Wiccans follow a set of principles that are designed to guide us towards right action. So, the basic formula for manifestation is as follows. Thoughts lead to feelings. Feelings lead to actions. Our actions lead to results. Now, what we're dealing with here is the very beginning of that process of manifestation, which is our thoughts. Where do our thoughts come from? What we think comes from our programming. Remember, our brain is a big supercomputer. It receives information and stores information and organizes information in the best way that it can. Okay? And all of this information is what we've seen, what we've heard, and what we've experienced. What do we believe is true about the nature of our existence? Okay, now, as Wiccans, our most common belief is the Wiccan Rede. Do what you will and it harm none. This basically means live the way you want and do whatever you want as long as no one gets harmed. And that includes the self. And that's very important. There's a great deal of reasoning that has led to the development of this read. Many Wiccans believe in the threefold law. This law states that whatever energy you put out returns to you in 3 times the force. Now, I've stated before that personally I don't believe in the threefold law, simply because from my point of view that's not balanced. Okay? And I truly believe that energy that flows in the universe must be balanced. But that's a completely different debate for another day. Okay? So, there are other belief systems that support this idea to some degree. The law of karma states that what you do comes back to you. And the law of attraction states that what you focus on expands. Nature must have balance. Energy must flow. The vibration you put out must return to you. Your environment matches your vibration. Which brings us back to our original formula for manifestation, but with one important addition. Your programming and beliefs lead to your thoughts, which lead to your feelings, which lead to your actions, which lead to results. Now, we can control everything in that formula except for one thing, and that is the results. It's at that point where the term surrender comes in, because once you have your beliefs in place that create and generate thoughts, remember you have control over what you what you want to hold on to as a truth, and what do you want to release as an untruth. Okay? Which of course leads to your feelings. How do you feel about those things? And whether we like it or not, sometimes, it's said that we can't control our feelings, but ultimately, yes, we can, because we can also choose thoughts. Yes, some thoughts are going to come to us unbidden. They're just going to pop in there. But the energy that we give to those thoughts is going to determine what kind of feeling comes out of it. So it can be very, very tricky in shifting the energy. And of course, we are motivated by these thoughts and feelings. So that's what's going to dictate our actions. So we have control over our actions. But what we don't have control over is the impact that those actions have. That's the result. And that's when the term surrender comes in. Because we can plan and plan and plan and plan, and do everything that we consider is right or ethical. But ultimately, when it comes to the end result, that's when we don't have control. So, anyway, and that's another discussion, whole new discussion for another day. My goodness, there's so many subjects that can just come out of one subject. So, what we're going to do here is the ethics is focusing on that first part of the equation, which is our programming and beliefs. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you a set of beliefs that are put out by the Wiccan Church of Canada. I'm going to just read them out to begin with, and then I'll make comments at the end, because there's some very interesting points that I definitely want to make after I read this out to you. Okay? So, number 1. The universe is in some inscrutable way self-aware, as are all things in it. Number 2, portions of self-awareness within the universe may be called gods. The number of gods in the universe, in principle, is unknowable. 3, self-awareness has no gender, and so it is legitimate to personify any god or goddess as having gender. 4, self-awareness in complex things may be of a greater order than that in simple things. In order to express such order, it is legitimate, but not necessary, to refer to some lesser gods as spirits, dryads, fairies, angels, or whatever. It is also legitimate, but not necessary, to refer to the self-awareness of the whole universe as a monotheistic god or goddess. 5. What happens to a personality upon the death of the body is inherently unknowable, or at least unprovable. Therefore, it is legitimate to adopt any belief about an afterlife that one finds satisfying. 6. No human action exists in a vacuum, unaffected and unaffecting any other occurrence. The effects of action may be referred to as karmic, according to the principle promulgated by various Eastern religions. Karmic repercussions may be thought to extend to an afterlife. 7. Questions about the origin of the universe are inherently unanswerable. Therefore, it is legitimate to adopt any belief about the matter that one finds satisfying. 8. We will never know everything about the physical laws which govern our universe. Therefore, we cannot know whether an event which apparently contravenes such laws is a miracle in the sense of having been caused by a god to occur against natural law, or is the result of natural forces not yet understood. 9. The web of karmic interrelatedness which enfolds all events is infinitely complex. Therefore, it is impossible to know for sure whether prayers are answered through the intervention of a god or through changes which the act of praying makes within the worshipper. 10. Self-awareness is not inherently good or bad. It simply is. Thus, the gods are not dictators nor arbitrators of morality. Human society creates human systems, but these have nothing to do with the will of the gods. Society has a moral right to protect itself from violence and outside force. But this right is not granted by the gods. Society simply assumes this right. 11. Religious experience is totally subjective, and thus nobody can judge the quality of another's encounter with the gods. 12. The preceding articles of faith have been largely expressions of what is not knowable, combined with assertions of the legitimacy of holding beliefs in the face of this inevitable ignorance. Thus, the principal article of faith is that tolerance of the religious beliefs of others is morally mandatory. Now, comments. I really like this set of principles of belief simply because it is not exclusive to Wicca. In nowhere in this does it say that this is a Wiccan faith, although it is presented by a Wiccan organization. What I'm saying is it's not exclusive to them. And in nowhere in here does it give you specific rules and regulations on how to live. It is simply stating what they are viewing as logical and reasonable assumptions about the nature of the universe, which is completely based on, guess what? We don't know everything, and we don't experience everything. So how can we sit here and put out rules and regulations for other people when we have absolutely no clue what their life experiences are? And this is the basis, from my point of view, of why I believe personally that it is not a good thing to judge others, simply because you don't know their life, you don't know their mind, you don't know what they've experienced, what they've been through. You're not qualified. Obviously, we don't live in pure anarchy where we just let people run amok and do whatever they want. Because once again, if you look at one of these principles that they've put out here, says society has a moral right to protect itself from violence and outside force. So obviously we have laws that are in place to protect people from people who lose their noodle and go on murderous rampages. All right. And I mean, across the board, people are going to agree with something like that simply because, okay, we're trying to live under the principle of do no harm. Okay. And obviously letting somebody run amok on a murderous rampage is, yeah, allowing harm. So yeah, we're going to cut that off the knees right there. But when it comes to a lot of other little finer points, one thing that I've been noticing a great deal is there's this awful little phrase which actually I find quite amusing, where they say the devil is in the details. I find that our society is being micromanaged to death. There are so many teeny tiny little rules and regulations that have been put out. It's got to the point of ridiculousness where you've got legal texts that are this thick and they keep getting edited and added to and subtracted from and so on and so on. And there's laws on the books that are just absolutely ridiculous in the extreme. And a lot of things that have been happening with the adding of new laws and so on. It sometimes when you look at them, it seems like they've deviated so far from the basic ethics of protection and do no harm that you're left wondering how useful are any of these laws to begin with. But that could also be another discussion for another day. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about the absolute most basic principle, of course, which is the whole concept of do no harm. And one of the things that I found was, as I said before, cross-culturally, this whole idea of do no harm, which is the basis of many different cultures across the board, there is at least some version of this that I'm going to refer to the one that's most common that a lot of people are going to relate to, which is the golden rule. The golden rule was something that was pretty much put forward or made more popular by the Christians, because it's actually based on a Bible verse that was spoken by Jesus, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so there are many versions of this golden rule, and I'm going to read out some of those for you right here. Okay. Common sense says, treat people the way you'd like to be treated. So, Buddhism says, hurt not others with that which pains yourself. Judaism, from the Old Testament, says, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Hinduism says, one should always treat others as they themselves wish to be treated. Now, I'm going to try to pronounce this. Please forgive me. I'm reading it. Zoroastrianism. Whatever it is. Sorry, pronunciation is not my strong point. Whatever is disagreeable to yourself, do not do unto others. Confucianism. What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. And of course, Christianity. Whatsoever ye would that others should do to you, do ye even so to them. Of course, that's King James Version. Okay, so I'm going to read to you the quote that was given by Jesus, that the golden rule is based on. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. Okay. Now see, Jesus was a good guy. Alright. In principle, he only taught 3 things: kindness, harmlessness, and unselfish love. The unselfish love is the principle of that verse that I just read. Now, there is a story that I'm going to read to you here as well, which illustrates that principle perfectly. And some people are going to be familiar with it, because there's a few variations of this out there that at least I've seen. In fact, I saw a little video on Facebook recently that illustrated this little story. So this is really great, and I find that this really hits home, like it really resonates as an absolute truth. Okay. There was a man who died and was being taken to heaven by angels. But first they wanted to show him hell, just for the hell of it, I guess. The angels took him to a place where there was a great bowl, so great it was as big as a lake. The bowl was filled with a nutritious stew. All the way around the sides of this bowl were people, emaciated, starving, miserable people. These people had spoons to eat the stew with that were long enough to reach it from the shore, about 12 feet. The trouble was, while they could scoop up the stew into the spoon, They could not get it into their mouths because the spoons were so long the stew would fall off before they could get it to their mouths. So here were all these pathetic people suffering and moaning in agony, constantly trying to eat the food that was abundantly in front of them, all in vain. Next, the angels took the man to heaven. To his surprise, he saw the same scene. There it was, a giant lake-like bowl of the same stew, surrounded by people with 12-foot-long spoons. Yet something was different here. All these people were smiling, happy, and healthy looking. Why? What is the difference here that these people are happy and well fed? The man said to the angels. They replied, Have you not eyes to see? The man looked more carefully and observed that one person would scoop up the stew and bring it to the mouth of another. Then someone else would scoop up stew and feed it to the other. The angels smiled and said, Here the people feed each other. Here are the people that learned the way of love. So, this is one of the reasons why you're going to hear me very often say, we must take care of each other. It is selfishness that is the ultimate enemy, the ultimate evil. We do not exist in a vacuum. As was said in one of the other principles of belief, the things that we do not occur in a vacuum. Everything that we say, do, think impacts our environment in some way. And because our environment is not just this tiny little bubble, we are impacting the universe as a whole with everything that we think, feel, say, do. Quantum physics is a very interesting subject. And of course, like everything else, that's a huge subject for another day, which I'll probably get into. But one of the things that has been observed by quantum physics is this. In experiments that have been done where you have an observer, the results will change with the presence of an observer. And holy crap, doesn't that blow your mind? Even just the simple act of being present and observing changes the outcome of an experiment where everything else is the same. So just your existence, your very existence here, has an impact on the universe as a whole. Now, for some people, that might feel very oppressive in the fact that, oh my God, I have to keep an eye on every single thought that I say and so on. Don't burden your mind with that stuff, okay? Keep it simple. And what's the simplest thing that we can do? We can love each other. We can take care of each other. True unselfish love is saying, I want what's best for you, no matter what that means. And how do we know what's best for someone? Sometimes we don't. Okay, the universe does. And unfortunately, sometimes the universe isn't telling. Or the universe is actually telling, but we don't know how to interpret it. It makes things a little difficult at that point, you know, when we don't have an idea of what is it that the universe wants. And this is one of the reasons why I think that it's extremely arrogant for somebody to sit up and say, well, I know what God's will is. Really? Okay. You just keep right on believing that. We'll go over here and do our thing, okay? So, anyway, I'm starting to trail off a little bit because there's at least one more thing that I want to share with you that is extremely important, especially when it comes to if you're in a position where you want to follow a particular religious faith or you want to get involved with a group. I think that this is an extremely useful tool that you'll definitely want to use. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say you got to take this lovely little page of paper with you everywhere and check off little boxes and so on. But I think if you read something like this over and over again a few times, just to get it clear in your mind what it is you're looking for and what you're watching for when you're getting involved in religious faiths and groups, that it's going to be there in your mind and it's going to help you to subconsciously make your own evaluation as to whether or not this religion or particular group is right for you. I would recommend definitely going online and downloading this. This is called Isaac Bonewitz's Cult Danger Evaluation. Now, I'm going to read this out to you. And every once in a while I might be able to cite some examples. Oh boy, have I had personal examples from all of this. But I just want you to get an idea of this type of evaluation and how it can be an extremely useful tool. Okay, so the first point here is internal control. And this is the amount of internal political power exercised by leaders over members. How much control or power does the leader have over the members? The amount of wisdom claimed by leaders. The amount of infallibility declared or implied about decisions or doctrinal scriptural interpretations. I was a member of a group at one point where the leader was saying that the priesthood is infallible, that they're always right. And I'm just kind of doing the whole, really? Aren't they human? Humans are fallible. Come on now. Okay, so next point. Wisdom credited to leaders by members. Amount of trust in decisions or doctrinal scriptural interpretations made by leaders. Okay, this is once again that whole idea that the leaders know everything. Okay, yes, they've done their research. Yes, they've gained a lot of wisdom and so on like that. But guess what? There is no one person who can know everything. Okay. The next point is dogma. Rigidity of reality concepts taught. Amount of doctrinal inflexibility or fundamentalism. I find personally in my experience that fundamentalism is quite the trap. Okay, because it all comes back to that whole idea, one person can't know everything. Yeah. The next point is recruiting. This is emphasis put on attracting new members. Amount of proselytizing. Proselytizing being going out there, standing on the soapbox, preaching, trying to lure people in. I think you're probably going to be most familiar with the practices of Jehovah's Witnesses who go door to door trying to recruit. Okay, so that's the example of that. Okay, the next point is front groups. Number of subsidiary groups using different names from that of the main group. This is like having business with different little offshoots that all are part of the main business kind of idea. Quite often when this happens, when you've got a bunch of offshoot groups that are still part of the main group, there are some things that can be occurring here. And it's not always that way, but there should be some type of alarm bell going off concerning that, where sometimes there are subsidiary groups that are put out there just to draw away from the name of a base group that has earned itself a not so great reputation. So you might end up being a part of this little subsidiary group and discover later on, okay, that this group was created to draw attention away from an original group that received a bad reputation. So that's something to watch out for too. All right, so next point is wealth, amount of money and or property desired or obtained by group. Emphasis on members' donations, economic lifestyle of the leaders compared to ordinary members. You don't have to look far for the example of that one. That one would be those television evangelists, okay? Those guys that keep going, send your donations, send your donations. The ones who have their own personal jets because God told them they were supposed to have it. So, boy. And everybody gives all of their money, and these religious leaders live in such opulence, and they're protected, and of course this is mostly in the States, and they're protected by the laws, and while everybody in the congregation is giving them all this money, these religious leaders are living in mansions and having yachts and planes and, yeah, living quite the lifestyle that is very, very different from the members of the congregation. Okay. Next point, political power. Amount of external political influence desired or obtained. Emphasis on directing members' secular votes. You see this sometimes in politicians where they start talking about what a good Christian they are, or how their religious doctrines dictate how they live and how they vote and so on like this. And honestly, from my point of view, religion and politics, they definitely need to be separated. Okay, because religion, from my point of view, is something that is very personal. And politics is basically something that is supposed to be governing society as a whole and allowing us to live our religious freedom and not oppress it. So, yeah, they need to stay separated. The next point is sexual manipulation of the members by the leaders. The amount of control exercised over sexuality of the members. Advancement depended on sexual favors or specific lifestyle. This is something that you see quite often. As far as your sex and sexuality goes, this is something that is extremely personal and never, ever should be dictated by a leader. This kind of manipulation is abuse. Whether they're telling you who you should love or how you should love, or that whole idea of you can't be a leader or you can't advance until you have a sexual relationship with one of the other leaders. That is a horrific abuse of power, and that is definitely the time you want to run. Run, run, run. Okay. Next point is censorship. Amount of control over members' access to outside opinions on group, its doctrines, and leaders. Okay. We live in a society where we're very, very big on the whole idea of freedom of speech. Now, obviously, if you feel that you need to badmouth the group or the people within it, then obviously that's not a place that you want to be. But you should still be able to bring up issues and address issues with enough freedom where you feel like your voice is being heard. But if the leadership is censoring you and saying, no, you can't say those things, there's a problem. Okay. Next point, dropout control, intensity of efforts directed at preventing or returning dropouts. So if somebody decides that they don't want to be a member of the group anymore, they should have the freedom of leaving. There's, this whole idea of permanence. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in the universe that is permanent. Okay, so if they're working really friggin' hard to keep you, or it seems like they're panicking over the thought of you leaving, that should set off some alarm bells as well. There's something that's not quite right there. Okay. Next point is violence. Amount of approval when used by or for the group, its doctrines or leaders. Okay. This is basically, do the leaders of the group promote violence as a way to effect change or to push their personal agendas? That is something that definitely should also be making you run the other way, simply because it has been proven over and over and over and again that violence doesn't bring about the changes, the positive changes that we need. And once again, it goes against the basic principles of belief of do no harm. Okay. The next point is paranoia. Amount of fear concerning real or imagined enemies, perceived power of opponents, prevalence of conspiracy theories. When I was teaching this particular section at a workshop many years ago, one of the points that I made that I saw at the time that was very prevalent among different pagan groups, Wiccan groups, whatever, is people would come up to me and they would say, you see that person over there? That person is a spy from another group trying to figure out what we're doing. Oh my. So if there's a lot of crap like that going on, or if somebody is saying, "Ooh, this other group or whatever, they're casting spells towards us and conspiracy theories and all that other stuff," oh, definitely run the other way. Run. Okay. Next point, grimness. Amount of disapproval concerning jokes about the group, its doctrines, or leaders. If you don't think that the universe has a sense of humor, then honey, you're not living. Okay? To be so rigid and so stiff and not be able to see life from a certain point of humor, oh my heavens, that's not living. That is absolutely not living. Come on. We have to be able to make the jokes. Obviously, nobody likes, racist, sexist jokes or anything, that is extremely harmful like that. But what's really interesting is there is in the Japanese belief system, there is a goddess that is dedicated to irreverent humor. So this whole concept of the whole grimness thing, oh, come on, if you can't laugh at yourself, yet you're not living, you're not having fun, you're not enjoying life. You need joy and pleasure in your life. And sometimes that means having a warped and twisted sense of humor. Okay? All right, the next point is the surrender of will. The amount of emphasis on members not having to be responsible for personal decisions, degree of individual disempowerment created by the group, its doctrines, or its leaders. Okay? This is basically saying that you give your power over to the leaders and everything will be just fine. That means you absolve yourself of any personal responsibility. And if there's one thing that has been prevalent through this entire workshop, this entire lecture, whatever, it is the whole idea of you must take personal responsibility for yourself. And one thing, this is interesting, one thing that my kids tried to pull on me once was that whole phrase, the devil made me do it. No, 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 honey. There's no way you're getting away with that nonsense. And that's when it became extremely clear to me that I had not gotten through to my kids this whole idea of personal responsibility, and boy, did they get a lesson on that day. Yeah. So the next point is hypocrisy. Amount of approval for other actions which the group officially considers immoral or unethical when done by or for the group, its doctrines or leaders. The willingness to violate groups' declared principles for political, psychological, economic, or other gain. So, this is basically the phrase, do as I say, not as I do. So when that kind of nonsense is going on, there's definitely a big problem. There's where those alarm bells should be going off. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of the cult danger evaluation. And this is pretty much, like the on a scale of 1 to 10, how does this group rate according to these principles? Yeah. So, I'm going to be wrapping this up pretty quick here, since I've been nattering on for darn near an hour. The most important thing to remember is everything you believe, think, feel, and do is a choice. Even doing nothing is a choice. Everything has consequences. Ask yourself the 3 soul questions. Who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? Or how can I serve? Another version of that particular question, that last one, that is put forward by the Eastern philosophies is, what is my dharma, which is what is what is my fate, what is my purpose, kind of idea. I think that in conclusion, the most important thing that we can do is keep things simple. And as far as ethics go, the most absolute basics that we need to employ as a society is this: we must take care of each other. Do no harm. Practice kindness. Practice harmlessness. And practice unselfish love. If you've got even those basic principles, even if you don't know what other principles that you believe in, even if you're having a struggle with what it is that you believe is true about the nature of God, Goddess, Great Spirit, the universe, and the nature of the human condition, if you can at least focus on those few things, then you're doing much better than a great deal of the population who have lists of laws, rules, and principles like pages long. Okay? The best thing that you can do for yourself is to keep things simple. So I've given you lots of stuff to think about today, and I've nattered on for quite a long time, and hopefully you don't get too bored through the whole thing. And I'm just really hoping that I got the point across of how important it is for us to help each other and take care of each other. And that is one of the biggest motivating features for me as to why I'm doing a lot of these videos and stuff, because I really do want to reach out there and I want to help people, and I want to give them that little bright spot of light in all the darkness that seems to be surrounding us right now. So I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. I love you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll talk again soon. If you found this video to be helpful to you, then please like, please share, please subscribe. If you have any ideas or suggestions or comments, please leave a comment. And if you feel that this content was extremely valuable to you and you wish to make a monetary gift or a donation, please feel free to do so by sending an e-transfer to wellinwisdom@hotmail.ca. Thank you so much for watching. You have a great day.